25/8 is in the business of time. We help leaders of small and medium-sized businesses work smarter, not harder, so they feel like they have an extra hour in the day and day in the week. Go from don't know what I don't know to I can't miss this show, as we talk proven strategies, practical tips and insider insights from a diverse range of industry leaders. Make time to grow your capabilities and confidence with 25/8.
This week on Make Time, a business podcast by 25/8, we make time for Michelle Creevey, CEO of Purpose Procurement and ex-supply chain leader from Boeing Defence Australia. Interviewed by Make Time host Sam Hurley, CEO of 25/8. 25/8, business education and high-performance training for SMEs who like to work smarter, not harder.
Okay, this week we're welcoming Michelle Creevey. Michelle is a distinguished leader in supply chain management. She's got over 17 years of expertise in procurement, governance, and supplier development. She spent more than a decade at Boeing Defence Australia, which is the world's largest aviation aerospace company. And she's played a pivotal role in the extended supply chain leadership team there. We're going to hear from Michelle today about her time at Boeing, but also her move to support SMEs in the procurement through that supply chain management. Welcome, Michelle. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me.
What I would really like to get straight into is, how did you get into procurement? What was the path to this 17-year career in procurement, Michelle?
Yeah, so Sam, I started off my working life in very different fields to where I've ended up. The immediate 10 years before going into procurement, I'd been Director of Sales and Marketing for a large hotel and travel group, and had really been at that table on the other side of the negotiating table for that 10, 12-year period. I took a transition into procurement, working for the Future Star program, which was the design, construction, rebuild of the Star Casino in Sydney. And what they were looking for was someone who had extensive experience in the tourism hospitality field in order to be able to work with the chefs and work with the designers. So it was a really interesting transition. And I found transitioning to the other side of the table great, purely because what I was aware of is the things that procurement don't do well that really impact good negotiations. So good salespeople or marketing people are looking for joint partnerships. They're not wanting you to drink the Kool-Aid. They're not wanting to sell ice to the Eskimo kind of those. I was in that space where what we were working towards was mutual partnerships and only taking our services into clients where it added value. Yeah, flipped over to the other side of the table. I worked for 4 years leading the design, construction, fit out projects for the Star Casino for all their front of house. So their award-winning hatted restaurants, their nightclub, their hotel. I didn't do anything on the gaming floor. That wasn't my space. So it was all the hospitality. And at the end of that project, they made some fairly significant redundancies, as you would imagine. It was a very top-heavy team to deliver those projects. So I led 14 out of the 17 programs, and it was a total of around 170 million of their 840 million budget, all delivered on time, on budget, and they were all award-winning restaurants and the nightclubs and the hotels. It was a very exciting experience to be involved in. As I said, what they did, they went through a round of redundancies and were very aggressive. Any project-related roles were made redundant. In between that role and Boeing, I then did a contract work for the Sky Casino, and then landed at Boeing and ended up on their extended leadership team for more than 11 years.
Yeah, amazing. Did you get any perks with the build and the hospitality?
Friends and family nights, the pre-opening night with David Chang in Mumafuku, literally David Chang serving me dishes, going to the key restaurant and putting it down as competitive analysis. So yeah, a lot of perks, and it meant that you had to stay fit. You were going to the gym every day when you were working down there because the food just was amazing. We got to enjoy a lot.
Yeah.
But the experience there that really highlighted to me was it's a very fast-moving environment. And a lot of businesses like Boeing, they move slow. And so there's definitely benefits each way. And those more dynamic industries that are customer facing, menus for restaurants change overnight because of seasonal foods and weather,
Yeah.
but also just staying in front. So they're very dynamic supply chain environments, which is great. It's a great learning experience. And they're okay. They're very good at saying it's okay to fail. If they change a menu and there's certain dishes that don't get taken up by clients, guess what? The chefs are back in the kitchen. They're redesigning, a new menu's printed and it's out on the table the next week. So they're very good at accepting failure and correcting course to stay on top.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learnings. People can write off industries like hospitality. Oh, it's just a restaurant. Everything down to the glass, the crockery, the staff's uniforms will give you a hat or won't give you a hat. Those critics are very brutal. They're down to every
So
detail.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
each one of those projects, I'm very proud. Momofuku actually got 3 hats, and it was the first restaurant in Australia's history to get 3 hats in the first year that it opened. So
Yeah,
that
wow,
restaurant, I can
amazing.
tell you now, every single item that was procured was intentional. And the cost factor and the negotiations and the securing of that inventory. You just can't have different plates because your supplier can't supply them, right? So there was an incredible amount of detail that went into who the suppliers were, what your inventory needs were in your forward planning, how much stock, what your min max on hold. You break glasses every night, you break plates. So those restaurants that are so detailed have an incredible rigor in their supply chain. So it was really a wonderful learning experience.
Yeah, I can
really was.
imagine. And I imagine the rigor needed was something quite attractive to the defence industry, traditionally quite risk averse. But I imagine it was quite the transition from hospitality to aviation aerospace. And talk to us about how that went. Fast paced to very different kind of environment.
Yeah, it was interesting because I walked into Boeing expecting them to have all of these amazing systems and tools, and they didn't. There were some things that they had gaps on. Just like anything, there's a risk profile that businesses manage, and I saw some things that were happening in the previous industry I worked in that were really great, and just expected to step in and Boeing have the same tools or disciplines, and they didn't because they were monitoring, measuring other things, and they were operating in a different way. So what that meant was it caused a lot of frustration for me as a change agent and someone who's really detailed, but it also made me really think about what the true opportunities for Boeing were and how I could bring my experience to the table. I also conversely learnt that some of the things that they do are incredibly important, and the way they did them and the systems and tools and processes they had were absolutely aligned to their regulated, legislated contract environment. So I was able to bring a new thought and new ideas to the table, but again, I learnt a lot in the first couple of years about, I think the biggest learning curve was that customer side. From the previous environments for procurement, they had no customer. The customer was people walking in the door. So it was an experience that they were creating. So everything was designed around a customer experience. Whereas walking into Boeing, it was about customer requirements, mission ready, all those sorts of things. So it's a very different lens that you have to take. So yeah, that was probably that was definitely the largest learning curve. But it also showed me that every company, no matter how good they are, and Boeing is a great company, right? There's always opportunities. There's always opportunities to do something different, become more agile, monitor and measure different things to work out where you're going.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I really love bringing learnings from a different sector, completely unrelated, into a new sector. And I think that's where innovation happens. You get these different perspectives, these different way of thinking. Michelle, can you give an example of where you brought your existing learning into Boeing and how that provided an advantage?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, Sam, was the people side of things. Defence is very rigorous against requirements and scheduling and all those sorts of things. And they don't really think about the human-centric impact of new policies and procedures. And supplier relationships, interestingly, and I am going back now 11 years, 12 years, supplier relationships were very much, we're Boeing, right? You want our business, right? You're going to do this and you're going to do it in this way. It's definitely evolved, and Boeing doesn't do that now. They truly, and you see all the defence primes very much behaving in this way. It's strategic partnerships, it's industry alignments, it's all those sorts of things. They still have very much gaps in that tactical transactional space to be able to optimize and leverage more supplier relationships, and in particular with small to medium businesses who don't get elevated and illuminated as much as they should, right? So what I found going into Boeing was, coming from another industry that was absolutely human-centric, there was a need to bring that in. And I think women are very good at that. And that's also the benefit, like very male-centric environments. Okay? And women are very good at looking at, are our relationships okay? Who's overworked? Who's overwhelmed by that task? And women are very good at that. So I think I also brought that into a very male dominant environment, was that female leadership.
Yeah, and that different perspective, and more about the people and the individual rather than just the process or the components within that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think supply chain optimization, typically companies will look at the data. So where's our cost? Where's our min-max? Where's the red bricks happening across our supply chain? What metric, KPI, SLA aren't we achieving? And yet some of the best opportunities are putting people before the process.
Yeah. Or the combination of the two within the ecosystem. Right. Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
And that comes into the supplier relationships as well.
Yeah.
It's both internal and external.
Yeah, which neatly segues into the work, and how I know you, Michelle, is through the Capability Uplift Program, which was incredible. Can you talk me through why you brought this to life and the benefits it brought to Boeing?
Yeah. So, Sam, my role was senior supplier development and diversity. And what I found, and it was a brand new role to Boeing Australia, it's the only role that they've got dedicated to that work. So I was the only person. And what I found was a lot of energy was being put into the supplier diversity piece, which from Boeing's perspective is small to medium businesses. They're diverse in their supply chain and diversity owned, so veteran, women and Indigenous. So I was doing a lot of work in the strategy to champion and find those opportunities. But what I found we weren't doing was the development piece. And I often used to say to supply chain, we put in our RFX packages past performance, and we've got a weighting on that in the weighting criteria. And then they come back and say, we don't actually have experience in your sector. And so we score them a 0. And I often used to say, we're actually in control of that. We are the ones who can give them performance, right?
Yeah, and experience,
So
yeah.
what I recognised was there was a lot of trust in small businesses. Boeing doesn't have, and I don't believe any defence prime has any trust issues with small to medium businesses. It's just that their packages of work are large, and they're often not designed for a small to medium business to be able to deliver. So they have to think about breaking that down and putting more discrete packages, integrating services, working in that regard. But conversely, small to medium businesses, in particular those ones that have an aspiration to get into defence, often either over-engineer what they need to do. So they run around getting all these ISO accreditations and everything else, and it may not be necessary for the work they're going to get asked to do. So full DISP accreditation is an example. That is going to change, and that there is movement there. But rewinding 3-4 years ago, it wasn't a requirement to have level 8, whereas they were being told that. So they're going after all this big, hairy work, or hairy, audacious work, and sometimes it was too much. So I realised we needed to demyth things. And I realised also that if we didn't open the doors and show them exactly what we need, what we deliver and what we buy for capture planning, not wasting their time, we may not even buy what they sell.
Yeah.
But finding the people who can actually tell them that. So capture planning was enormously important, not to waste small to medium businesses' time. and then understanding how a defence prime operates. So we delivered things like the Project Management Fundamentals course. And that was an eye-opener because whilst they deliver projects, how a defence project is delivered is different.
Mhm.
It absolutely has a different rigor and a different way of operating. So I just really embraced the fact that we needed to open our doors. We needed to be transparent with industry. We needed to demyth things so they don't over engineer what their solutions are and how they're working. And we needed to create that opportunity that they could win small, start off discrete packages of work to be an improved supplier, start getting performance on the board, and start knowing how they can actually execute that agreement and operate with a company the size of Boeing. Very proud that the inaugural program, out of the 20 suppliers, 4 grew their existing business within Boeing, 3 secured brand new contracts, a number of them secured productization grants to the tune of $2.8 million, and 7 of the companies won state and national awards because they scaled up and they got more exposure.
Yeah,
And it was really actually not, it was a very difficult program to design. It was actually very difficult to get full sponsorship because it was a big investment, and very proud that Boeing stepped straight up to the plate. It was almost simple solutions, but a lot of work, a
yeah.
lot of delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, as you say, a big investment from Boeing to put into businesses that they might not engage. So incredible learning experience for all of the businesses going through. I met some of them through the program. We obviously did some training with you as well. And yeah, really passionate SMEs, really keen, but it's that lack of knowledge, inside knowledge. And I think we often see this in other businesses, is there's a lot of information in the head of the owners or in the leaders or in the team, but how do you get that out so that others can benefit and solve those problems? And and
25/8 definitely saw that in the pitch training work that you did leading up to Avalon, which was an incredible event. And one of the things that I really came to discover was that there's a huge appetite for learning from small to medium businesses. And Boeing, from the outset, we said, if as a result you discover the defence aviation, aerospace industry isn't right for you, then we've all had a win.
yeah.
Because there's so much effort that these small businesses can put into and then not get any return or decide then they're not ready for it. So again, that was that demything. We were okay with the results at the end of the year as to what companies were successful in the defence sector or successful with Boeing as a prime, because it was about creating an ecosystem for defence. And we also said, if your first contract is not with Boeing, that's okay too, because the purpose of this program is to actually build an ecosystem. So it was pretty exciting. And yeah, the work that 25/8 did with pitching, I know, and I saw them at other Otis forums and Quad Chart masterclasses, all standing up so much more confident, knowing exactly what their pitch was going to be. And as we said, it does sometimes just come down to the simple elements that really give them a bit more of an edge. And once they've got that confidence, they can talk to their business better than we ever could imagine.
And that's the thing. And then if they're able to communicate that effectively, it enables whoever they're talking to communicate that along the chain of responsibility and so forth. Yeah.
Yep.
Boeing, they spend more than 200 million annually with about 640 Australian suppliers. That's huge, many of which are SMEs, Michelle. And so from your experience, what are some of the things that make an SME successful in their ability to engage in these projects, go through the procurement process?
So definitely leveraging any relationships you've got. And they may not be a relationship that is working on a program or in an area that your goods or services align with, but just getting to know the prime, like just asking, where are your locations, what's your emerging work, wherever they can share, because they're very large, complex organizations and not one person knows everything. If you went to the global CEO of Boeing and said, tell me all the programs Boeing do, Kelly Orderberg would not be able to answer that question. And it's not for him to know every layer. And it's the same in Australia. So defence primes have so many programs going on, so many different sites, so many different ways of operating. Trying to understand that. So do your research. Even if you're not going to go to Avalon, online they will have the sought after, they'll have the, meet the prime session, and they'll all upload their sought after capabilities. So do research as to what they're delivering and what they're buying and where that fits. So when you're having conversations, they're more informed. They don't really have a lot of time. Typically, when you actually get to the team that technically is responsible for what you do and what you're selling, they often don't have a lot of time. So use your network and use the network as much as you can to get an understanding of that organisation. Follow them on LinkedIn. Very simple. I followed Boeing on LinkedIn when I worked for them, and I found out more about Boeing on LinkedIn on a daily basis than I did on our intranet, because there were so many announcements all the time.
Yeah.
So simple things like that. The other thing I would say is get your quad chart right.
Yeah.
It's absolutely essential. I believe in having multiple quad charts where your organisation actually can support different domains.
Yeah.
If you're standing in front of the Navy, it wants to look like the Navy.
Yeah.
If you're standing in front of the Army, put it in Army green.
Yeah.
Simple things, but it's a very visual document, and make sure it's up to date. Make sure it's targeted to a domain is a very clear thing, I would say, for SMEs. And they definitely need to work on it. And I believe they need consulting effort, or they need to go to, and when you're in your business, sometimes you don't see the right things to put on it. So I definitely suggest that make sure someone looks at it. Make sure you work with someone.
Yeah.
Whether that's another company, a consultant, kind of doesn't matter, right? But don't lock and load it yourself.
Yeah, or copy paste
get
from the last 50 years. I think that's the thing. I love what you're saying about the tailoring it. And again, from experience, I've seen various different versions of quad charts, but it really needs to resonate with, you've got a few seconds to engage who you're giving that to. So make sure it's really relevant to them. Otherwise, Yeah,
and not make it out of date. And also have, and defence is a bit funny like this, take the opportunity to have a QR code on the back of it, as an example, where they can scan and download it at an event. You might run out, so you have a laminated version, so you've at least got one, right? But there's people who don't want to take stuff home, and people are obtaining information differently. And sometimes defence is a bit wary of scanning codes and doing all those sorts of things. But I think putting a modern edge on your quad chart is important. And that's why I was saying designing it for the domains. Know your customer, know what's important to them. It may just come down to shifting your accreditations and qualifications in a different order for a different domain.
Yeah.
Or the last project you worked on, it could be the exact same quad chart, right? But know your customer, I suppose, is what I'm saying, and try and find out as much as you can in a way that it doesn't waste your time when you're actually in front of them as well. And you might actually decide in doing some research that particular defence prime's not right for you now.
Yeah. And so just for those that aren't aware of what a quad chart is, if you're new to defence, a quad chart usually is a one-page document that quite succinctly says what your value proposition, what your business does, your capabilities, your capacity often, and contact details. So it's a great tool in the business development cycle and very often used in defence, and especially at trade events. Michelle, you're talking that sometimes people might take these away, and that's what they might ask for, your quad chart. And certainly maybe in the conversations, if you're reaching out to people and trying to learn, they might ask for a quad chart. Send me your quad chart. That might be another step in that sort of connection, building your ecosystem. What about in the actual procurement process, the sort of RFQs, or what have you noted there, Michelle, in terms of successes for SMEs and challenges for them through that procurement process?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, Sam, I think is getting to understand the contract types. And what I mean by that is from time to time, a large organisation will just send out an RFP or an RFQ. And they won't be asking for much. They're literally asking for past performance, commitment to delivery, cost, etc. Then they'll send out more of an RFX design pack or an RFT, so a full tender. And that will come with a statement of work, right? And the reason I always say to small businesses, look at what documents you receive, is because that'll tell you the level of effort, right? If they don't have a statement of work, don't over-engineer it. Be very clear with your value proposition, very clear with your pricing, all of those sorts of things. Meet the deadline, submit it. If it comes with a statement of work, then that's when you automatically have to say, we need to create a checklist on the mandatory things for submission, because before we finally submit it, we are going to make sure we are compliant. Because the very first thing that review team typically will do is say, is it a non-compliant response, yes or no? And if they're non-compliant, they will be set aside straight away.
Yeah.
If there's a must
Yeah.
or a document, they will just go, we went out to 5 bidders, 3 are fully compliant, 1's a little bit on the edge, 1 isn't. You're done. You set aside unless something changes in a big way.
Yeah.
You don't have an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Understanding what that pack is that has reached your inbox and putting in the right level of effort, asking the right questions. So if it is an RFT and you've got a statement of work, if you feel that you don't understand some of those requirements, ask the question. Because often what small businesses do is they over-engineer things. They put a lot of effort in where they don't need to, and they miss where they need to. And the most brutal part of it is putting margin into their pricing where they're making assumptions. And so all of a sudden they blow themselves out of the water, or they misread something and underestimate the value. And then when they win the contract, everyone goes, well, you're responsible for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And margin's gone. And it may be something they can't do and it's not in their wheelhouse, and so performance is impacted. So asking questions is definitely needed, and doing a checklist for something that, if it's got a statement of work, know that it's a moderate to complex procurement. It typically will have an evaluation team. They will have a weighting criteria. It will have to be, firstly, fully compliant, so answering everything. And yeah, you have to really know that statement of work and know what you're bidding. But the other thing is to have a pricing strategy. So you're going to go in with your first price. Inevitably, there will be a best and final. There will be something that needs to be tweaked. Sometimes you don't get much time to respond on that. Once, ideally before you submit, but at least when you first submit, take some time then to consider what plan B on a pricing strategy is going to be.
Yeah.
So it's calculated and organised. And it may not be reducing your price. It could be waste reduction, waste elimination, process improvement that drives savings.
Yeah.
And so if you do have time, I always say to small businesses, submit an alternative proposal.
Yeah.
If you know all of that value add, submit your fully conforming bid, 100% conforming, and then where you've got value propositions and alternatives, actually submit that as an alternative and call all those waste elimination, process improvements, value add that you can bring to the table.
Brilliant. Yeah.
In an alternative.
Yeah.
They won't score the alternative with the first round.
Yeah.
They'll go, great, it's there.
Yeah.
They will score you on whether you're compliant
Yeah.
with your submission, first and foremost, done. But if you've then got alternative proposals and value adds, that can really get an internal project team quite excited about what that particular company can bring to the table. And it may be things that are going to go out in another package of work, and they go, oh, we can actually just partner with them. Yeah. Those 3 things. Understand the documents you're receiving. When there's a statement of work, know it's a moderate to complex procurement.
Yeah.
Know that it's got to be fully compliant, so create a checklist. Ask questions where it's not clear.
Yeah.
And have a pricing strategy.
Yeah, I think that
would be
brilliant.
my top 3 tips.
Yeah, amazing. And what about partial? And this is the challenge, and you touched on this before when you were saying when Boeing goes out, a lot of the projects are quite large. So for many SMEs, they have a specialism, a real area, real niche, and so they could only really do a partial bid or partial tender. What do you advise in those situations, Michelle?
Yeah, so we did take that up in the Capability Uplift Program, Sam, where we talked to them about being competitor mates, which is one day you're going to be competing and one day you might need to be mates. So get to know get to know the ecosystem and be open to having conversations where you can partner.
Yeah.
Defence primes don't expect small to medium businesses to be able to deliver everything. And where you can actually partner to deliver, that can be a really great value proposition. And that's where you would potentially consider the alternative offer. So you would go in and you would say, this is everything that we can do. And when I say a fully compliant bid, it means answering everything.
Yeah.
So it can be, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And being very honest about it. We can't do that.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that most organisations assume is that someone out there can do all of it. So some of these tenders that go out are absolute wish lists, right?
Yeah.
And they know they're going to have to make a compromise. They may not be able to find industry that can do it. So what are they prepared to compromise on? They've already designed that. They already know what their showstoppers are. And I've been in those working groups where before releasing that pack, because all those weighting criteria and all those sorts of mandatories are done before it's released from an ethical point of view, and it's all signed off as the full pack. And you showstop the limitations of industry, and you're trying to test and push industry to scale up.
Yeah.
So don't assume that someone's going to go in with a 100% compliant bid either.
Yeah, and that there's someone out there that can do it. Yeah, that's and I think it's that confidence too. And again, touching on the Capability Uplift Program, having that confidence to say, okay, let's put in a bid that says that we can do this and we're happy to partner. And you might have someone else that puts in another partial bid that then potentially could work together in full. I'm really conscious of time, Michelle. I think they're really great tips, but I really want to just get into your business now. You are becoming the SME that you were supporting before. Talk to us about your journey to CEO of Purpose Procurement.
Yeah. Look, Sam, I really just felt that I wanted to dedicate all of my work to small to medium businesses and that social outcome piece. And it was really my time just to do me, really. I really felt that I wanted to just drive or work by the values. And when I say that, my values are very much aligned to Boeing, and it was a great company to work for. But I really feel that there's a broader need across industry for large organisations to work better with SMEs and for SMEs to work better with large organisations. I'm just really excited about taking my experience from the defence industry into other sectors. It's all transferable. Some of the policies and procedures and regulations and all those sorts of things might be slightly different, but essentially how we operate in this space is very similar. Yeah, I just got really excited about taking my experience to other sectors and really just waking up every day to do the work that I really want to do.
Yeah.
So that is in that tender and bid writing space, making sure there's compelling stories to win business and to be compliant. But also that supply chain optimization. There's a lot of companies out there doing some really brilliant work in procurement consulting, but a lot of it's data driven and a lot of it is driven by actual process, whereas I'm always focused on that human centric piece.
Yeah.
So putting people before process. Who is your customer? How do you operate? And the other bit is that industry engagement. How are we actually engaging? What purposeful relationships are we bringing through in our supply chain? And how are we leveraging those relationships I always say agility beats fragility every day.
Yeah, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's so much rigidity in some industries and how they operate. And where you actually uncouple that and get agility is people. It's not tools to do that, but it's actually in your people. And that's suppliers. It's internal, external. So, yeah, I don't know whether that's covered that off. But
yeah, no, it's really cool. And I love that you have, taken your passion. You've seen how it can benefit businesses to work with that. But it's a two-way relationship that you could help bridge the gap, I think, for both industry and SMEs. And, that catalyst between the two. I see you as, I love your agility. We talk about strategic agility. And you're right. It's about people and their ability to make fast decisions with new information and be able to adapt and adjust to what's happening. That's really important to business. But so, Michelle, when we think about your ideal client, who are they? Who are the types of people that you'll be working with now?
Yeah, government agencies and large organisations where they know they've got to do better and do different. In particular, in that bid phase where there's design thinking needed to create opportunities. Because, as I said, they have large packages of work, and there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, we're going to do 3% of spend with Indigenous businesses. How are you going to achieve that? What's the actionable things that you're going to put in your bid response that's going to tell that customer or that potential customer that you know what you're doing and you know how to do it, and that you'll be compliant when you get the bid? So not just making statements, but actually those actionable strategies are very much needed in that space. For small to medium businesses, opportunity assessment and optimization of their supply chain. So having a look at where their pain points are and where their blockers are to be able to manage large contracts, and also supporting their bids and tenders too, because they've got compelling stories that what I've found in the past is they go, oh, we're a veteran business, but we don't really want to leverage that. Yeah, leverage that, because you come with clearances. In the defence sector, you're the customer.
That's right.
In any other sector, you are disciplined. You're educated. You're motivated. Your mission sense of schedule and all those sorts of things are ingrained in you as a professional. So there's so many benefits that those sorts of things bring. So yeah, the twofold to your point of supporting large organisations to bring small to medium and diversity-owned businesses into their supply chain, both through tender and bid writing and commitments in that space, or just understanding how they can work better. But supporting small to medium businesses to get that bid readiness and get that optimization in their supply chain so they can remove waste and they can be operating in a smart way. And so as they grow, they can just continue to scale.
Yeah, amazing. And I think the value you can provide to them is enormous, can make a huge difference, and I can't wait for you to have more influence on these larger organizations as well, so we can see some impact for the SMEs. But that's it for today. Michelle, thanks so much for joining us. I'm just going to put in your website address into the show notes. I'm sure Michelle would be open to connecting on LinkedIn as well if you want to reach out there. Lucky for those that are participating in one of 25X program, as you can book in to see Michelle in as one of your industry mentor sessions, so you can have a chat with her there as well. So very lucky to have Michelle as part of our portfolio of amazing experts. There's so much more I wanted to talk to you about, Michelle, but we've run out of time. Maybe I need to do a part 2 in a few months' time, but we'll try and schedule that. But thanks again for coming today.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I really look forward to joining the program.
For me, big takeaways from today were that idea of understanding how to respond based on what's been put out there. I think that's huge. I think the idea that you can respond as long as you're compliant and with your specialism. I can't do it all, but I could do some of it. And the third thing is really trying to find those strategic partnerships. And I love the term that you had of the compet mates. I think you should trademark it. But I think...
But it's very true in every industry.
Yeah.
And it's also large organisations and defence primes do it. Joint ventures all the time.
Yeah.
Rail programs, infrastructure programs. Yeah. One day they will be hard competing, and the next day they'll be joint ventures.
Yeah.
So small businesses having that same mindset can be a game changer.
Really can't
if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
A real game changer.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a formal legal JV, right?
Yeah.
It can just be, do you want a partner to submit this bid?
And
we're going to name you as our primary subcontractor.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do all the things we can't do, either by skill or capacity.
Yeah, that's it.
And the other thing is, Sam, a no bid and not being frightened to say, this isn't right for us now. And so if you develop good relationships and you communicate that in a professional way, for whatever the reason your no bid is, you either don't have capacity at the time, whatever that might be. A lot of small businesses respond to a tender because they feel they've just got to respond, because if they don't, they won't get another opportunity. But if you respond and it's non-compliant or not fitting, that potentially will do more damage for your relationship than saying, this bid isn't right for us now for these reasons, right? And we really welcome, after this contract had been awarded, we really welcome a interview or a meeting to discuss our capabilities. We can be ready for, or you can understand exactly what our capabilities are for the next time you're coming out to market where our business services align.
Yeah, because
And most procurement team will go, oh, you haven't wasted our time. Thank you.
exactly, that's the thing, is there's mutual benefit in doing that,
Right.
because you guys, the larger enterprises, want someone that can help solve the problem, do the project, but they don't want to have to waste time, and so equally the SME doesn't have time or the resources to do this. So I think, yeah, and again it comes back to the people and that relationship building and not being
Absolutely.
afraid to reach out, have those conversations as part
And
of that.
asking questions about
Yeah.
the statement of work before you get into responding, because you might decide it's not for you.
Yeah.
And if you've asked really clear strategic questions, they will absolutely respect that.
Yeah, and I think
And you'll win, even if you don't have a relationship, the likelihood that you will develop a relationship from that is, I've seen it happen more times than I can count.
Yeah, another great tip there, Michelle, because I think sometimes, and we work with ICN and the gateway, sometimes you see the gateway and it doesn't feel human. And so you're responding to an EOI or an RFQ or whatever, and that process doesn't feel like you're connecting with a human. But I think if you can change the mindset and actually picture that you are communicating with someone on the other side and say,
Absolutely.
hey, I think that will change.
And
Yeah,
and the people on the other side of that are actually wanting to engage. They absolutely want questions. They want clarifications, all of those sorts of things. They're standing ready to attention, genuinely, because they want you to get it right. They don't want to waste any. They don't want their time wasted, and they don't want you to waste your time. So, yeah, a no bid sometimes can be a good win as well.
there you go. That we'll end it there. That's great. End with some further tips. Thanks, Michelle. What very valuable lessons for SMEs today. Thank you again.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for listening to Make Time, a business podcast by 25/8. If you like the show, please take a moment to write a review and feedback on what you'd like to hear next. If you never want to miss an episode, hit subscribe or follow on your favourite listening channel. If you want to get even smarter, join our newsletter, community, or take one of our programs. Links down below. See you next time.